does car wash workshops. He's been to Ferguson. I mean, this man is everywhere, everywhere. And he's also a father. He has, children and a good, a good community leader where he lives, where he's from. So with that, I want to introduce Alex, my brother, my son, my friend, a good guy.
Well, thank you very much. I'm so honored to be here in Oakland. Oakland that has such a strong history for standing up to the system and for fighting for the people. So I feel like I'm here with a little bit of history to talk about, changing a lot of these things that are going on. As Anita mentioned, and as my good friend over here, Misha knows, I'm a former police officer. I worked the infamous Rampart Division. I'm sure a lot of you guys heard about Rampart. Rampart became famous for the movie Training Day, which Denzel Washington played a rogue Los Angeles police officer. A lot of people think that that might have just been a movie, but we know now that a lot of this behavior that's kind of outlandish is true. Here in Oakland, we had, to my understanding, another similar type of rogue police outfit, which was very much like our crash units that we had in Los Angeles. We had, I guess here, an entity called the Riders. And so, one of the things that people always want to do is they want to believe that the police is good. We're raised with that perception. As a young child, sometimes we want to be police officers, we want to be firemen, we want to be those heroes for our societies. And I was one of those people that grew up like that, thinking that I was going to help change the world, I was going to do things that really helped out my community. Instead, what happened was I was a witness to a lot of things that really changed me, things that screwed me up here. And so when I was driving up here today, I was thinking, what am I going to talk about? I mean, there's always so much to talk about with respect to, all the frustration that a lot of us have when dealing with law enforcement. Some of you here have lost family members in a very ugly way, and it's something that no matter what I say, can that ever massage or take away any of the pain that is always going to be there, okay? And that anger is always going to be there. And God knows that if something happened to one of my boys, because I have, 5 little, well, not little anymore, but I have 5 boys and I have a girl, I know that I would probably become some kind of monster myself. So, how did I get into this? A lot of people sometimes ask me, why did you decide to become a police officer? I think I already answered that a little bit. I really, truly wanted to help people. And so I started the Los Angeles Police Department in 1989, started going through the academy. It was right before Rodney King, and things were still pretty much being done old school ways, okay, early 90s. It was during the time of the crack war, the so-called war against drugs that was going on, and basically it was a system that was designed to clean up the streets. I don't know how else to say it, but that's what was going on, where people were being snatched up by law enforcement officers, cases being fabricated, being made up to deal with, the burgeoning, drugs that were coming into the system. But rather than, instead of trying to get the people the help that they needed, the times for then, required that a lot of these people that would be on the streets, usually, as we know, blacks, Latinos, minorities, that they would be the ones that would be caught up in this dragnet. And so this was the environment that I began to work in here for a while, trying to assimilate all these things that were going on, having an idealistic mind, again, not really yet quite understanding as a 22, 23-year-old what the heck I was getting myself involved in. Until in 1991, I had an incident 6 months after Rodney King where I was off duty, I was driving my own car, I was supposed to go to a wedding that day with my then ex-wife when I witnessed a robbery going on. And this young mother and her daughter were being assaulted by a young man, a person that was later identified as an 18th Street gang member. And so, again, I didn't know what was going on at the time. I just saw this guy trying to rip off a chain off this lady's neck. I didn't think nothing of it. I pulled over, I grabbed the guy. The woman came running up to me with her child. Metal, he took away my chain, he robbed me. I told her, go call the police, I'm off duty. I need a backup to show up. So as I'm holding on to this young man, he starts yelling out, I didn't do anything. He's yelling this in Spanish. Out of nowhere comes 6 other gang members. And at this point, they try to lynch the kid for me. I start fighting with them. At some point, I reach for my gun, and I start walking backwards into the street. And I look all around me, and there's people there. This is in the middle of downtown Los Angeles. And at that moment, I'm thinking, I'm going to be in jail here because I'm going to shoot somebody. And again, the whole Rodney King thing is going through my mind. When all of a sudden a car comes out of nowhere and the car runs me over. And at that point, I'm looking up into the air, I'm looking up into the sky, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my, what did I do here? Why did I get myself involved here? The department made a big deal about it because they wanted to show that not all their officers would shoot people or kill people. However, for me on that day, what ended up happening was I became a very angry person. I became a very brutal person. Unknown to me, I had what they call PTSD. Now you couple the PTSD with the racially charged department that the LAPD was then and still continues to be, a department where you had partners. I had a close family member friend who took me out to Watts, who took me out to that predominantly black area at that time, and he said, what do you think of these fun people, son? And I kind of ignored him. I didn't understand what he meant by fun people. And then he said it again, what do you think about these fun people, son? And then I asked, why do you keep on saying these are fun people? He said, well, these are some effed up niggers, okay? That's what he said. And so it was, again, in this environment here that I continued to try to make sense of this job of being a police officer, dealing with this post-traumatic stress disorder that I now had, and working in this environment which would soon become a racially charged environment very similar to what we have that's going on right now with Michael Brown and Ferguson, okay? Where one day in 1992, the riots broke out, and right next to the police station, if you look over on this side, you can see 200-foot flames shooting up in the air. Everywhere we drove around that day, there was flames. I'll never forget, it was a very scary situation. There would be bodies on the ground, and I was thinking to myself, is this hell? I mean, it really seemed to me to be the end of the world at that particular time period, being a young man and trying to make sense of what was going on. For my partners that were there that day, those days when the riots were going on, it appeared to be that we were like sharks. Sharks just kind of converging upon the people, beating the protesters, beating the looters, and trying to show the defiance, the arrogance that has been a part of law enforcement for the ages. The arrogance where they will not admit that they are wrong. That, maybe we shouldn't have beaten Rodney King. Maybe we shouldn't have shot that person in the back. Maybe we shouldn't have shown all this excessive force. This is the problem with law enforcement that I've identified and that ended up becoming a part of my culture. So here I was, again, after coming back to the department, being off for about a couple months with right broken ankle, broken leg, and dealing with partners that would tell me, why didn't you shoot that MFer? Why didn't you kill him? Why didn't you become involved? And for me, I really hadn't thought about that because I didn't become a police officer to kill people. That's not what I came on here for. But as I continue to work the streets, I worked with partners that you would see them, many of them veterans from the Vietnam War era. As time went on, we began getting the Iraq veterans, and these were people that would be patrolling the streets, and you would think that they were back in the African Serengeti or in Fallujah or other war-torn places where they were hunting for, people that they could get involved in officer-involved shootings. And so that was the culture here. It was the culture of the cowboy. Some of you might remember the movie Colors, right? You know, very, very realistic of this macho cop bravado that became part of my psyche and the psyche then of a lot of these police officers who thought that they were doing a good thing. Okay, that thought that because they had nice homes, that they lived in the really nice areas, you know, far removed from South Central, Compton, Watts, the East LAs, those areas that were considered to be the lowlife, scum of the earth, so to speak. These officers who, you know, one time when I was searching a house, I went in with my partner, and it turned out to be a home full of undocumented immigrants who were there huddled waiting for the coyote, the person that was going to turn them into to, you know, release them to their people. And as we walked in there, you could smell the putrid stench of the urine, see the cockroaches running around, refried beans, and most of all, these people that were just frightened, scared. And my partner, as we walked in, he said, "Look at these dirty Mexicans." At which point I looked at him and I said, "Hey, you know," and then he says, "Well, I'm not talking about you." And that was his response to you know, his overt racism that he had. And so I began to see that, you know, little by little, and little by little also began to affect me. Because when you're around these type of white supremacy idiots, that also affects you too. It doesn't matter if you're white, it doesn't matter if you're black, it doesn't matter if you're Latino or Asian or whatever. You start to think that you're better than other people. And that was the mentality, the philosophy that becomes, you know, a police officer. And so, you know, a lot of times it's really easy to say that the police are bad, the police are wicked, but the police is us. We are the people. The people become the police. The system creates these monsters. The system created Christopher Dorner. Ironically, Christopher Dorner came out in the news today because, yesterday, because the report is out now on his behavior, the allegations that he made in his manifesto, in which he declared that there was racism and all these different biases. And guess what? It was true. All right? They pretty much said and agreed with him that there is a lot of nepotism. There is a double standard for higher-ranking police officers and lower-ranking officers. And, you know, there's this crazy Board of Rights kangaroo court that basically holds the police officers' lives in their hands, in which case you'll get a lot of officers that will literally go crazy. I have a good friend right now by the name of Cheryl Dorsey. Cheryl Dorsey has written a book called Prelude to a Manifesto, Black and Blue. And her book is the black female officer's experience of growing up and seeing this as a black person, the treatment that they would have to go through sometime in working for a white-created system of superiority to keep control of the people. And so, you know, it is this system here that I became a part of, that I continue to talk about here now to this very day. You know, I've been very fortunate that for the past 14, 15 years I've been doing these investigations, doing some very high-profile cases. The Andrew Lopez is one of them. I did a lot of the Rampart cases too, running into some, you know, ex-partners, even family members of mine who were being investigated or who showed up in reports where they had committed all these abuses. And the fact of the matter is we shouldn't be afraid to talk about these issues. It shouldn't be a police officer's job to come forward and to be labeled a whistleblower. It should be their job. If a police officer is out there abusing and hitting people, well then their partner should say, "Hey man, you know, what the heck is wrong with you? You know, you need to get some help. You need to get maybe this officer some mental health training." But that's not what happens. Everybody stays quiet because the moment that a police officer tries to break the code of silence, they're automatically labeled a troublemaker. You're a troublemaker. And that's what happened with Dorner. That's what happened with my friend Cheryl Dorsey. That's what happens with countless police officers all across the country. And I talk to them on a regular basis, to these officers like Sam Costales in New Mexico, who went against a system where he was witness to a famous Indianapolis 500 racing car driver by the name of Al Unser Sr. getting what they call a whip ass, by the Albuquerque sheriffs. And so here's Al Unser, winner, I guess, 4 times of the Indianapolis 500, and these police officers fabricate this story that Al Unser attacked the police. And, if this guy Sam Costales hadn't been there, the truth would have never come out of the situation. And so you need to have the whistleblower to be able to be the person that has that kind of protection in order to make sure that, these people who are being slaughtered, like your family over here, there's officers that know the truth. There's so many of these cases where it's crazy that, I think that's probably the hardest thing you guys have to go through, is knowing all the lies. It's like a second execution where they just drag the victim's name through the dirt. They say he was a pothead. What does it have to do with him being shot in the back 7 times? And so, we're looking at a situation where, and I was talking to some people about this prior to me coming up here, where it's going to blow up eventually. I've been praying that the federal government will do something, that the president, before he leaves office, he will do something, that he'll address the issue of racism, because that's really what it's all about. Anita was in Ferguson, so was Dion. They saw the faces of these people that it's straight out of Mississippi Burning, like it's still, the civil rights era. And that's scary, because the racists are coming out. They're not holding back. My understanding too is that the KKK just came out. And they said, you know what, we're going to get into this, because it is about race. And so we need to talk about the race issue, not so much demonizing people, because I think that's been the problem here, why we're all so worked up, we're angry, we're pissed off, is because we start attacking right away. What we need to attack is this archaic old way of being, of believing that someone, by virtue of their color of their skin, is a lesser human being. And that's one of the things that I had to do, because I became racist myself too. I'll be straight out with you guys there and honest. We have to be able to look at ourselves for that ugly person that we become, because I want to be able to stand up in front of you and tell you I was some corrupt ass pig, if I was not able to look into myself for the things that I once participated in and for what I was. And so these police officers, they need to be able to have that kind of atonement, that releasing of, I beat somebody that I shouldn't have. I even know a police officer that is a good friend of mine. I haven't talked to him for quite some time, but he always recounts about how back in the late 60s, he shot a 16-year-old kid in the back. And he shot him because he could, because he lost control, because he got angry. And, he was telling me, you know what, Alex, not a day goes by that I don't think about that kid. And so there's this mental illness that develops from these officers becoming sociopaths, to the point where you now have these killers who are backed by a militarized system that continues to get worse and worse and worse. My fear, seeing it from my perspective, having been in the military, I was in Central America back in the late 80s, having been in the most corrupt, demonized police division on the planet, having done some very strong, high-profile cases, I've come to the conclusion that revolution, is something that's going to happen here if the United States does not wake up. If we don't have this serious discussion about this culture, about the code of silence, about racism, this is something that we are going to see happen in our lifetime, because there's too much information out there now. A lot of these governments have been toppled throughout the Middle East is all because of the internet. people aren't stupid. People can see now. People can become more educated. That was one of the things about me that I became very enlightened after I left law enforcement. I wanted to find out what the heck happened to me. And I learned that there was this thing called PTSD. And, you know, the more that I learned about that, I was able to deal with my own sickness and to deal with the issues of forgiveness, being able to let go of the fact that, you know, I probably put away some people that shouldn't be in jail. Someone like Carrie, like Anita's son, that now I'm trying to help him out. Or, you know, I mean, I never got to the point where I killed anyone, thank God, but I cannot imagine living with that thought in my mind that because I lost control for a second, that I took away an innocent human life. And it's all backed up. The police are made to feel like they're the heroes. In some cases, like in LA County, the police officers get tattoos for killing. Okay, what does that do? It glorifies us. And yet we have a society that is not acknowledging these problems. It's not talking about the code of silence. Rather, we continue to paint these officers as heroes. Right? They try to call me a hero. They try to give me a special award for me getting involved. And I told them, no, you know, I was just doing my job. This is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm a police officer. If I get killed, well, you know, that's my job. Okay, and if I don't like it, well, maybe I should go find another line of work. But, you know, in that time period, there wasn't this kind of discussion like how there is now. This is still relatively a very new field of civil rights that we're dealing with here. This is the new civil rights period that we're involved in, especially now with the biggest case ever to hit the country, the Michael Brown issue. There's some cases which, in my humble opinion, are a lot more stronger than Michael Brown. All right, like Misha's son here being, you know, made Swiss cheese, you know, with 48 shots. I mean, how do you make sense of that? How does anyone make sense of that? My case with Andy Lopez, you know, young 13-year-old boy walking to go play with his friends, and he gets taken out and just executed. And so, you know, we need to discuss this. It's something that, you know, we try to come up with all these different, groups or oversight committees. Now we have the civilian oversight, but none of that does any good because we are not dealing with what they call the culture. Now it's the culture that makes these police officers be the racist jerks that they become. Okay? And I'm not here to say that the police are bad. Okay? Even though they might be. What I'm here to say is that the system is bad. We cannot attack Darren Wilson, cannot attack the person that killed Misha's kid or the incarcerated Anita's son, because they're all over the place. There's thousands of these sociopathic officers that have itchy trigger fingers, that have these egos that are just out of control. Okay, what we need to have is a national discussion now. And like I said, my goal here of starting this whistleblower group that I'm trying to bring out here now is to have a dialogue, to be able to talk about these issues without dealing with the normal, you know, oh, these are bad cops, you know, what are they doing? Because they're going to get attacked by the police. Of course, they're going to be attacked by the public. Everybody sometimes always looks at things very lopsided and jaded, and they try to find out what your motivation is. My personal motivation and the motivation for a lot of these people, including Frank Serpico, who I'm proud to call a friend of mine. I actually hunted him down to try to talk to Mr. Serpico regarding his experiences. I mean, why back in the 70s did he decide to do what he did? And it's because he envisioned a law enforcement that does things right. But if you can imagine the environment that he was working in at that time, where going to work wasn't to be a police officer just because you were going to get paid by graft. You were going to be on the team. That was your real job. That's where you would make the real money. And back then, during that time period, it was normal. It was normal to actually operate that, you know, you would be getting paid. Not by the police department so much. that would maybe give you a couple $100s a month, you would be making $300 a day off of some bookie, prostitution, or whatever the case might have been. And so now fast forward to the year 2014, and what Frank has to say is that now instead of the graft, it's this extreme violence that we're dealing with. It's extreme perjury, framing, setting up of people, all right? When I began to listen and talk to initially to Anita, you know, a lot of times these people whose loved ones have been framed, that have been set up, people don't listen to them. They don't listen to it because there's so many of these cases that are out there. The Innocence Project, for example, has been responsible for releasing so many people, but only because of DNA, for the most part, right? That's the tragedy. Now imagine the ones where there is no DNA. The people, thousands upon thousands of people that are there because you had some power-hungry idiot that had a vendetta, that didn't like maybe your loved one, or maybe didn't like you, the family member. And they chose to target you because they can do that. And they can make your life miserable. They can ruin it. And so we need to really start looking at these issues here for what they are. And, you know, we need the police. We need good police officers. We need mentally healthy police officers. We need police officers who take on a true public servant role and not a, I'm a ghetto gunfighter, I'm going to kick your ass, you know, Nazi-type mentality. Because that's how a lot of these guys are. They are Nazis. All right, they will look at you and think that you're scum. And some of you that have had encounters with some of these guys have seen in their eyes this hatred. You've seen this anger. You can feel it in their hearts. And when I was over there in Ferguson, I saw that, you know, to a very, very strong degree. So the good thing here is you know, we're here together today. You know, we're having this dialogue. You know, no one's booting me off the stage yet. Get off XP. You know, no one's thrown anything at me yet. I am afraid sometimes. I used to be afraid because at one point I had my picture posted on the police station walls because I was investigating a police officer who had killed, beaten to death in broad daylight, a little homie in the projects in East Los Angeles. And I backed off because, you know, no one wants to get killed. I definitely don't want to be a martyr. I don't want to be no statue in some park or anything crazy. But at the same time, I continue speaking out because, you know, as someone was telling me, it sets me free. I feel good about it. I don't feel like I'm a snitch. I feel like I'm a more whole person. I feel good being with the people now. I feel like I'm on the right side. And again, you know, I hope that if nothing else, you know, this will help stimulate a further discussion on what we need to do so that we can one day, you know, reach that dream that Martin Luther King dreamed of. Thank you very much.